Welcome everybody to another episode of Fantasy News. I am your disheveled goblin host, Daniel Green, and today we're actually going to be front-loading the news with some entertainment news before falling back into the book news, because we have a very exciting announcement for Cyberpunk 2077 / Cyberpunk Red / Cyberpunk Edrunners / Cyberpunk No Coincidence fans. They're doing a lot of multi-medium stuff, but that's because the Cyberpunk franchise is reportedly getting its first live-action adaptation, collaborating with anonymous content studios, who you might know for many of their critically acclaimed successes, such as True Detective, Mr. Robot, Revenant, and Spotlight. And something I would assume would be happening with a massive franchise like this, but was noted in the press release, is the Cyberpunk team is going to be working directly with the head of television, Garrett Kimball, the director of development, Ryan Schwartz, and Chief Executive Officer David Levine, who is a, quote, industry veteran who oversaw productions of series such as True Detective, Westworld, and True Blood, and the early seasons of Game of Thrones. Cool. Now, this is super early on in the process. Like, they're still looking for a screenwriter to create a script. And while it's not specifically stated whether or not this will be a movie or TV adaptation, with the head of television development from Anonymous Content being involved, that's where I'm assuming it's going, and where I'd prefer to see the first of hopefully maybe more Cyberpunk adaptations to go.
And it has been noted that this is to tell a new story in the world, so note that I noted that note.
And sitting down to record this story, I was kind of thinking internally how successful the Cyberpunk brand has been in recent years. Yes, don't get me wrong, the initial launch of Cyberpunk 2077 was awful. But since then, the game has been updated to a state where most people playing it seem to be extremely happy. They had a hit TV show, a crazy large expansion, as well as a book that, while I wasn't the biggest fan of, still was quality. I have been a fan of playing the tabletop RPG Cyberpunk Red, which I did with some friends back in Virginia. My current listing of Cyberpunk franchise entries is Cyberpunk Red, Cyberpunk 2077, Edgerunners, a bit of a gap, no coincidence. And is just a very big fan of cyberpunk as a genre. Yay, I'm excited. But well, we are talking about Cyberpunk! Let's go ahead and talk about some sci-fi in general, because Orbit Books is apparently releasing an all-new series of covers for the Culture series, written by Ian Banks. This is specifically to Orbit UK, which in the last fantasy news, I mentioned a book that was only going to be shipping out to the UK as well, which I didn't note there, but some people had some issues with that. Hey, there's a good chunk of my audience in the UK. I'm here to represent you as well. Punched a necklace into my chest. That kind of hurt. Available November 30th, my birthday. This made me look into Ian Banks more than I have previously when it comes to sci-fi books, and now the Culture series is moved quite a bit up my TBR, because I've never really seen it make much waves in the booktube space. In terms of just sci-fi discussion as a whole, this seems to be rather important, and I feel like I'm missing out. So, cool, on my TBR.
It is time for serious news now.
Because Walt Disney Pictures VFX workers vote unanimously for a unionization in a labor board election. In addition to the similarly unanimous election of Marvel Studios VFX workers last month, the unanimous unionization of Disney Pictures VFX workers, in addition to the similarly unanimous election of Marvel Studios VFX workers last month, is a part of an ongoing wave of organizing throughout the entertainment industry, with workers across several previously unrepresented classifications rallying to reunite under IATSE, which stands for the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Moving Picture Technologies, Artists, and Allied Crafts of the United States. Again, I've seen some confusion, some people taking this as they are going on strike right now. No, they're just voting to unionize, which is something that I think across the entire entertainment industry, if not just labor as a whole, is a good thing. Now, there's all kinds of nuanced angles to how VFX workers for a long time have been overworked, underpaid, with stagnant wages in Hollywood and just around the world, so it's good to see some movement on this front. When it comes to the fantasy news angle of it, though, the worst thing I can tell you is some of the projects you might be looking forward to down the road could be delayed, but I think I speak for all of us when we'd rather the VFX workers workers involved in these projects get the proper compensation and time they need to perfect their craft than get some of the VFX we've seen in recent years, which almost seem like they're regressing. I know every year we see better VFX than we've seen before, but it seems like recently we're seeing a lot of great and then strangely more and more mediocre to bad. That could be related to many different issues, but I think it's safe to say overworked and underpaid VFX workers contributes at least to some of that. We're gonna slide away from that serious news though, and I'm gonna go ahead and tickle your little funny bone because we had a haha happen, and I like when ha-has happen. A lovely little Cosmere sleuth over on Reddit by the username majesticloquat-1347 was watching an alien documentary when he came across this. That's Brandon Sanderson's language from the Mistborn series, and it's called the Steel Alphabet. And this little alien documentary on some streaming platform, I think Peacock, decided to buy, I assume just by looking at this alien documentary at large, some stock footage that had, without permission, used Sanderson's Steel language, and I imagine hoped no one would ever notice that. Normally when covering these kind of stories, I try to carefully only assign blame to those who deserve it, but this is one of the rare situations where it's like everyone but Sanderson, I guess, screwed up here. The person who developed the stock footage, which like 80% of the visuals on the screen during this documentary, I skimmed through it, were cheap looking stock footage things I see on like Motion Array, but there also is some blame to the person who developed this stock footage and blatantly clearly stole the symbols from Sanderson. Don't do that. Apparently Sanderson's team have already been made aware of it based on the comments and replies we saw here on the post, and it's just about the level of quality and effort I'd expect from a UFO documentary that at one point has this guy just in front of a not ironed blanket. Dude, seriously, the amount of effort here, Jesus. Okay, I'm gonna fulfill a promise I made for you back in the day, which is to talk about some books. And I'm happy to say that we have gotten a new deluxe special edition for both Caliban's War and Abaddon's Gate for the Expanse series. Just like the first special edition in the Expanse series, this seems quite promising, and actually at a reasonable price of $40. For those of you who missed Tuesday's video, I have a bit of a large issue with what special editions have been claimed to be and priced at since I started reviewing them here on the channel quite some time ago, though first Expanse Books Anniversary Edition, which seemed to be in the same line of these, was great, and so my expectations here are for something great and worthwhile for the readers. If you want to see more about my issues with specific special editions that have been straight up awful, and how I'm trying to back up my bark with some bite, launching a special edition with Wraithmark that is priced reasonably, I feel, for a special edition, while including far more than your average book, self-promo plug there. But thematically bringing in the adaptation and book news today and combining them in a melting pot of we are going to go ahead and cover the fact that Dennis E. Taylor, the author behind the Bobiverse series, tweeted out, "I am authorized to make the following statement. The Bobiverse series has been optioned to Lord Miller Productions / Universal. Also, woohoo. Now, I must say, goblins, do not go to Twitter and then tweet at Dennis E. Taylor for more information, because in the comments someone asked for more and he said, I can't. This is all I can say right now," which, don't bother the guy, leave him alone. Just be excited with me. Bobiverse, for those of you who don't know, falls into the very rare, in my experience, subgenre of comfy, cozy science fiction. Granted, it is in the cold, bleak expanse of space, but the personification of the lead character and his, I won't spoil it, but friends is what I'll say. I mean, if you Bobiverse, what do you think's happening here? Is wonderfully charming, and I highly recommend it if you're in the mood for some cold, empty expanse of space sci-fi that makes you feel like you're getting a big warm old hug. I'm going to end today's fantasy news by talking about some fan service that's been done. Fan service of a kind I approve of, because we have gotten a look at the episode titles for the upcoming Percy Jackson adaptation over at Disney+. And the episode titles apparently are following the chapters, with apparently a whole lot of the chapter titles being used for the show, which many fans, at least based off the comments I read, are taking as a sign that this will be a fairly faithful adaptation. I need to stop doing that, it's not funny. But the episode titles will be: I accidentally vaporized my pre-algebra teacher, I became Supreme Lord of the Bathroom, we visit the Garden Gnome Emporium, I plunge to my death, a god buys us cheeseburgers, we take a zebra to Vegas, we find out the truth, sort of, the prophecy comes true. Yay! I have never more in my life wanted to be a Percy Jackson fan. I've tried reading the first book twice, it just wasn't for me, well, admittedly being quite good for what it is, and I'm happy for the fans. From the outside looking in. But this has just been your latest episode of Fantasy News. Fortunately, the next time I record in this room, thank the lords, there should be proper sound padding so you stop getting this echo. And like and subscribe if you have not already. Check out my War of the Worlds special edition I was the art director of in collaboration with Wraithmarked in the description down below as well. And thank you to today's sponsor, Private Internet Access. The button. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.